Forgiveness is one of the factors that differentiates the exceptional from the mediocre or ineffective leader. It gives people the capacity to take risks, to be creative and to grow in their leadership. That's according to Manfred Kets Vries, INSEAD Professor of Leadership Development, who's here today to talk to us about his new research, The Art of Forgiveness, Differentiating Transformational Leaders. Manfred, welcome to INSEAD Knowledge.
Pleasure.
It's easy to understand how forgiveness can make us a better person, but how does it make a better leader?
The obvious example, and I touch upon it in the paper, is contrasting two African political leaders. And I've been many times in Africa. You fly over Zimbabwe, what do you see? A wasteland. You fly over South Africa, you see something different. Actually, I've been in Zimbabwe before it was a wasteland, which was really a very beautiful country. And you see two leaders there who have a very different attitude towards forgiveness. And if I ask my class, who is the leader you most admire who is still alive? 95% of the people, the answers are Mandela. And then I ask why? And they say forgiveness. Forgiveness is a very important factor in organizations. People who don't forgive create a very strange culture, because if you're the leader of an organization, you're also the high priest of the corporate culture. And the way you behave, the way you deal with mistakes. There's a famous example actually of Watson Sr. He was actually the founder of IBM. And he was in the 50s. And he had a young man who made a few $1 million mistake, which was a lot of money in the 50s. So Mr. Watson, who was this glorious executive, one of the most famous executive of the world, asked him to come and see him. So you can imagine that this young man was very nervous. So he walks into the office, and before Watson can say anything, he said, I guess you're going to fire me. He said, fire you? Fire you? After all the money I spent on your education? And that set the stage. You can make mistakes. Of course, if you make the same mistake, the forgiveness becomes a little bit more difficult. But forgiveness is critical. People who don't make mistakes don't do anything. They don't make any decisions. So a leader who can tolerate mistakes and see it as a learning opportunity. The leaders who give those kinds of opportunities for people to learn, the ones who preach forgiveness, are the ones who create a great corporate culture.
And how can forgiveness help organizations to take risks and become creative?
When you have an organization, when you make a mistake, you're going to be fired, it's a culture of fear. And you're going to be extremely careful. You're not going to do new things. You're very reluctant to do it. You basically do more of the same. And so it's a critical element, the ability to make mistakes, the ability to have forgiveness to get great companies. Any good organizations, people tolerate mistakes, not the same mistakes. That is a different story.
As well as being a good example yourself, what other ways can leaders incorporate forgiveness into their business culture?
You have to walk the talk. People always look at you. So now, if you are the leader of an organization, there is not as much forgiveness anymore if you're really the top person, because of all the kinds of constituents you have, who looks if the leader is still strong enough. But you can, as the king or queen, I think in general, I always make the comment, women in general might make better leaders. You can institutionalize that culture. And many organizations, unfortunately, are like gulags. There is, people are anxious. There's a lot of paranoia going on there, and a critical factor in organization again is trust. How to build trust. Now, are certain people more forgiving than others? Yes, you can say that. Are certain cultures more forgiving than others? Probably. Not that much research has been done about the topic. Are cultures in the East more forgiving than cultures at the West? It has to do with certain personality characteristics, probably.
And sometimes forgiveness is something that you can't force. It's an inner emotion. Does it have to be real, or can you voice it and try and move on that way?
Now you have also, there's a lot of pseudo forgiveness, that people say they forgive and don't forgive. Forgiving is not forgetting. Huh? It's a different thing. You don't, but you have to let things go. Otherwise, it causes an ulcer in you. You are troubled by it. If you cannot go on with life and you keep on hammering on the same thing, this rumination, over and over and over again, it eats in you. It causes you. You get sick. It makes you depressed. You're hurting yourself. So, but it's not always easy, because you also feel right, you know, the righteousness. I'm right and he is wrong, or she is wrong. I mean, I did the right thing. I mean, but it's the basis of all trouble in this world. Without forgiveness, you know, it's a very harsh world out there.
Are there some examples you can give of corporations or organisations now that are considered to be forgiving organisations? Or others where people go into and know that they have to be right?
Now, there are quite a few organizations which have a forgiving culture, which are the playful culture. I mean, I've been, I remember, but it's many years ago now, I did quite some case writing actually in the case of Virgin, which was a real playful culture. It was quite, and I can imagine that lots of, some of the companies, more recent companies, have that, but sometimes they are able to institutionalize. And I may give the example of, for example, you know, 3M as a good. There are also cultures, and I'm reluctant to say it, where you know, it's a very different story. When you think about some of the investment banks, and I was thinking about the investment bank which is out of business, Lehman Brothers. I mean, you know, and you start to wonder. I mean, think about Enron, another famous example, where you had a rank and jank culture. I mean, which is a terrible way of, it's a Darwinian soup culture. You start to wonder. I've been at some Russian organizations. I've got some work there. Also, sometimes I wonder. I mean, and it's my challenge to try to change that, to make it more playful, to create a more forgiveness culture, to create a more authenticity culture. Because basically, you spend so much life in organizations, and if you go there, you feel some kind of gulag. I mean, it's not good for the soul. That's what we do also here at INSEAD. I mean, at INSEAD we have now 2 programs, which are very much concentrated in how to create better organizations.
In general, is the business world becoming a more forgiving place?
Not necessarily, no. You know, it's. I wish I could say it. I mean, I don't think you can an empirical study about being a more forgiving place. Yesterday, not for the film, I was in a company which, you know, the turnover of people is far too high, and it has to do with forgiveness. The ultimate indicator of a great company, you know what that is? It is when you say, I would like my family and friends to work there. And if you have such a culture, people will stay longer. That means less cost for headhunters. People recommend it, the organization, to others, less cost for headhunters. People usually, unless you're masochistic, people work harder when you like the place you work. And also you're the people around, the different stakeholders. They like some continuity of the people in the organization. We have all the time a turnover because there is no forgiveness, there's no trust. It's a Darwinian soup.
Manfred, thanks for being with us on INSEAD Knowledge.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.